have left? Oh my goodness, we're almost done. Hello, welcome back. It's Monday. It is April 27th, and it's been a couple of weeks. I was sick and things like that, and I'm not going to make excuses. I'm just going to read. We're almost done, and I think no, I know we'll finish before the end of the school year, so soon we'll have to do votes on what we're going to read over the summer, or if we're going to read during the summer, and what we're going to read next year, and stuff like that. It's going to be fun. So, but in the meantime, we have chapter 20. So since it's been so long, remember Daystar and Shiera were in the castle, and there were the bubbles around, so the wizards put up a magical bubble around to keep everyone out of the castle, and then the dragons put one around that. When Daystar got there, the dragons took down their bubble, and Daystar put his sword in the other bubble, and the sword, absorbed all the magic from the bubble, and they went into the castle, and all the wizards started appearing and chasing after them, and Daystar and Shiera and Night Witch, of course, are looking for the king in the castle, and they're looking. They don't even know what he looks like or anything. They find a central room with a brazier. I looked it up. It's pronounced brazier. Brazier. And it means like an open fire. It's not like a fire pit, but it's like a container for the fire. And you can look at it on Wikipedia. There's pictures and stuff. It's kind of an older thing. Very old-fashioned, but for warming or for cooking or for light. A lot of it is for light. So it's a lot of fire in this one little area. So, not a good thing for Texas. It's a little too warm for that. But so they find this big old brazier and this guy on a couch, and they're like, well, this must be the king. And pretty soon after that, the wizards appear. So that's where we left off. So chapter 20, in which Daystar uses his sword. I stared at the wizards for an instant, then turned and jumped for the couch, hoping I could break the spell before the wizards did anything. I didn't make it. As I brought the flat of the sword down, the sleeping man vanished. The sword clanged softly against the couch, and I spun back to face the wizards. Something hit me as I turned, and suddenly I couldn't move my body at all. I could turn my head far enough to see Shiera, but that was all. Shiera looked as if she were concentrating on something, so I turned my head back to the wizards. They were standing around the sleeping man, who was now lying on the floor in front of the doorway. Well done, said one of the wizards to another. Thank you, the second wizard said. It was a mere trifle. There was a stir at the back of the group of wizards, and a moment later, Antorell pushed forward to the front. He had a bandage around one arm, probably where the dragon had bitten him. I forgot that happened. I want the boy, he said. Now! The wizard in front, who seemed to be the leader of the group, looked at Antorell coldly. We permitted you to join us in order to give you an opportunity to repair some of the damage you did 17 years ago, not to further your private ambitions. But you said I could have the boy. Antorell, you're a fool, the leader said. You may have the boy, but after we have possession of the sword, not before. I'll give you the sword then, Antorell said angrily. He strode around the edge of the brazier and reached for the hilt of the sword just above my hand. I wanted to jerk away, but I still couldn't move. As Antorell touched the sword, there was a flash of blue and gold light that flung him backward onto the floor. If he'd fallen a few inches to the other side, he'd have gone into the brazier. I found myself wishing he had, then found myself staring at the brazier. Something about it nibbled at my mind, but I couldn't make it come clear. I didn't have time to think about it, because the wizard started talking again. Antorell was picking himself off the floor, and the leader of the wizards smiled at him nastily. You see? You knew this would happen, Antorell said furiously. Of course I knew, the leader said. Had you spent your time hunting the sword instead of trying to get some sort of ridiculous revenge on Cimmerian, you too would know. Then demonstrate the proper method for me, Antorell said sarcastically. If you know so much, you take the sword. I am not so foolish, the other wizard replied. No one save the king of the enchanted forest can take that sword from a bearer who is not willing to give it up, especially not inside the castle. Then how do you expect to get it? Antorell said, even more sarcastically than before. We kill the king, the wizard said, gesturing at the sleeping figure on the floor in front of him. When the line of kings of the enchanted forest is ended, one of us can take up the rule of the castle. What good will that do? Antorell said. The boy will still have the sword, and as you have reminded me so many times in the past 2 days, he seems to be able to use it. The leader shrugged. If your tale is true, I shall admit to some surprise. I thought no one but the king of the enchanted forest could use the sword, which is why one of us must become king. You accuse me of lying? Why should I bother? It sounds like they don't like each other very much. Antorell scowled and started to raise his staff, then seemed to change his mind. When the boy blows your own spells back at you, perhaps you will see what I mean. Nonsense, the leader of the wizards replied. You obviously know little of what you speak. No, of course not. I've only seen the boy in action, Antorell said with awful sarcasm. The leader shrugged again. What the boy has learned matters little. The power of the sword passes to the ruler of the castle, and there is nothing he can do about it. He will be easy enough to take care of then. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a flicker of movement. Shiera was edging toward me. I had to force myself not to turn my head. This isn't boring. I promise I'm not yawning at you. I wasn't yawning before I started eating. Had to force myself not to turn my head. The wizards seemed to have forgotten both of us, and I didn't want to remind them. I hoped they wouldn't remember until after Shiera had done whatever she was planning to do. I also hoped Shiera was planning to do something. I certainly couldn't, and I didn't think Night Witch would be much help against all those wizards. Stop talking and let's get on with it, one of the wizards in the back said. An excellent suggestion. That is, if you are quite satisfied, Antorell, said the leader. Antorell glared and stalked over to the rest of the wizards. The leader looked around and nodded. Begin. Under other circumstances, the spellcasting would have been very interesting to watch. The wizards spent quite a bit of time arguing about where each of them should stand and exactly what the correct angle was for each staff, and in what order the spells should be said. The leader seemed particularly concerned that things be done right. Evidently, there was something about the castle that would cause problems if everything wasn't perfect. Finally, they agreed on what they were going to do, and they got started. As the wizard started chanting, something touched my arm. If I could have moved, I'd have jumped. It was Shiera. Do something before they finish, I whispered. I've been trying, Shiera whispered back, but it isn't working. Oh, no! I was so upset that I spoke the words in a normal tone of voice. Fortunately, the wizards were too busy chanting to notice. You haven't been polite to anyone since you apologized to Telemaine, and you used that up on the last bunch of wizards. Shiera looked stricken. Daystar, I'm sorry. There isn't anything we can do about it now, I said. I stopped because the wizards had stopped chanting. Shiera and I both looked at them, but the wizards didn't seem to be finished with what they were doing. They looked more like they'd been interrupted in the middle of things. The leader bent over the man on the floor who was still sleeping. A moment later, the wizard straightened with an exclamation and stretched his staff out over the man's body. The figure dissolved into sparkles, leaving a little blob of mud on the floor, and the other wizards stirred in surprise. A simulacrum, said someone. I let out my breath in relief. Simulacra are very hard to make. You have to mix earth, air, fire, and water in exactly the right proportions in order to get a good one, and that's fairly tricky. A really good magician can make a simulacrum that looks exactly like someone, but doesn't have any connection to the actual person at all. As a result, a simulacrum can't be used against someone the way other types of magic can. What they're mainly good for is confusing people. This one seemed to have done an excellent job. The wizards were glaring at each other accusingly. If that was a simulacrum, one of them said finally, where's the king? Who put it there anyway? Old Zeminar, probably, an older-looking wizard said. The simulacrum looked like him, and setting up a decoy is just the sort of thing he would do. That doesn't make sense. He started this whole affair in the first place. Why would he put a false king in the castle to distract us? Excuse me. Sick. Zeminar never trusted anybody. He probably wanted to do this himself, so he made it as hard as he could for anyone else to finish the job. Or maybe he was just being ornery. The older wizard shrugged. Either way, I doubt he expected to get eaten by a dragon. We have wasted enough time here, the leader of the wizards said with sudden decision. Silverex, take 3 others and begin searching for the king at once. We cannot allow him to escape again. He went on giving instructions, but I stopped paying attention. He wasn't talking to me, and I had other things to worry about. I was still holding the key in my left hand, and as soon as the simulacrum disappeared, the key had stopped tugging me and started getting warm. My other arm, the one with the sword, was tingling under the jangling of the wizards, and my head felt very light. I had a sudden, strong feeling that there was something important I ought to remember. I have that feeling several times a day. But the jangling of the wizard's magic kept distracting me before I could figure out what it was. I don't have that problem. Anyway. Daystar! Shiera hissed, practically in my ear. I jumped a little and realized that the wizard's spell holding me was beginning to weaken. I couldn't move very much or very fast, though, and if the wizards noticed, they'd just throw the spell at me again. I decided not to move at all until I was sure I could move the sword fast enough to block another spell, then whispered to Shiera, "Don't do that. They might notice." Shiera snorted. "If you don't want them to notice, you'd better try to notice sooner. That was the 3rd time I called you." "I'm sorry," I said. "So am I. What are we going to do?" "If you could—" "Night Witch!" I broke off in mid-sentence as a small black streak darted toward the group of wizards. One of them raised his staff. Shiera cried out, and Night Witch dodged. The spell hit the marble floor in a ball of light, and a moment later the kitten was among the wizard's feet. I couldn't see what was happening, but I could hear the wizard shouting, "There it goes! Stop it! It got away!" "Find it," the leader of the wizards commanded. "You, Grinaron? What a weird name. You, Grinaron, go after it. It may lead you to the one we seek." One of the wizards nodded and left, and I blinked. There were only 3 wizards left now, a short, round one, the one who's giving orders, and Antorell. Antorell was staring at Shiera and me. "What about them?" he said suddenly. "They may know something." The leader of the wizards looked thoughtful. "For once, Antorell, you may have made a useful suggestion. Persuading them to explain what they know may be difficult, however." Antorell grinned nastily. "I think I can manage it." "Really?" The leader sounded skeptical. "The girl is a fire witch, and the boy has the sword, remember?" "Sword or no, he cannot be immune to spells, or Silverex would never have been able to bind him," Antorell said. "What did you have in mind?" "Something like this." Antorell waved his staff casually in my direction as he spoke. Even if I'd been able to move, I wouldn't have been able to twist the sword into a position to block the spell before it hit me, especially since I didn't realize what he was doing until the pain struck. It felt as if I were fighting the fire witch again, only this time the pain was through my whole body instead of just in my arms. It was worse than anything I'd ever felt. I think I screamed, but I'm not sure. Beside me, Shiera shouted, and a long ribbon of fire shot through the air in front of me, straight at Antorell. Antorell caught fire almost at once. As he slapped at his clothes and his staff, trying to put out the flames, he doesn't know about stop, drop, and roll. The pain stopped abruptly, and the key in my left hand got even hotter. Neither of the other wizards even tried to help Antorell. They just stood and stared at Shiera and me. The ribbon of fire still hung in the air above the brazier, making a curtain of flames between us and the wizards. Slowly, reluctantly, it began to fade, and as it did, the heat from the key in my left hand faded along with it. Fire, I thought. Fire in the brazier, fire in the key. Kazal had said the key could open any door in the castle, and Shiera had said something about the key and fire. I lifted my left hand, fighting the remnant of the wizard spell, and threw the key forward into the brazier. There was a whoosh of flame that leapt all the way to the ceiling, then died. I thought I saw something in it, but it vanished before I could be sure. The brazier started to glow, and the whole room was suddenly thick and heavy with magic, like the air just before a summer thunderstorm. I could feel the magic growing stronger, as if it was getting ready for something, but nothing else happened. I was sure there was something else I should do, but I couldn't think what. "Stop them!" the leader of the wizards shouted. "Move, Daystar!" Shira cried, and ducked down behind the brazier. I tried to follow her, but I couldn't move fast enough because of the remains of the binding spell, and because I was worrying about what else I was supposed to do in order to finish the spell I started with the key. I saw Antorell and the other wizards bring their staffs up, and I tried desperately to move the sword far enough to block whatever they were throwing at me. I made it, but only just. The sword flashed as the wizard's spell hit it, and a tingle ran through me. The spell that had been binding me vanished. I could feel what was left of it flowing through the sword, along with the rest of the magic the wizards had thrown. It felt a lot like the jolt of power I'd gotten in the forest when I'd used the sword on the spell the wizards had aimed at Shira, except that this time I could tell where the power was going. It was flowing through me, into the magic of the enchanted forest itself, back where it had come from in the first place, if Kazal was right about where the wizards got most of their magic. Back to... I felt my eyes widening and almost missed blocking the next spell. Then 4 more wizards appeared behind the 3 in the doorway. If I didn't do something soon, I wouldn't have time for anything except blocking spells. There was no way to find out whether I was right except to try. I stepped to the edge of the brazier, took a deep breath, and said loudly, "Power of water, wind, and earth, turn the spell back to its birth. Raise the fire to free the Lord, by the power of wood and sword." As I spoke the last word, I thrust the sword of the sleeping king into the middle of the coals in the brazier. As the sword touched the coals, all the waiting magic around me surged forward, and suddenly I knew where it had come from. It was the magic of the castle and the enchanted forest itself, alive and growing, running like a net through the ground and the trees and the air. Fire shot up to the ceiling, the same way it had when I threw the key into the brazier, but this time the flames didn't fade. They got brighter and brighter until all I could see was fire. I heard a rumbling sound, like the roof of the caves of chance falling in, and the floor shook under me. A voice said loudly, "All hail the waker of the sword!" and voices all around me shouted, "Hail!" Echoes from the shout rolled around the room, like thunder rolling back and forth across the sky. I couldn't see anything except fire, I couldn't hear anything except echoes, and I couldn't feel anything at all. Then something in my head seemed to snap into place, and the noise stopped abruptly. I let go of the sword and stepped back a pace. The light in my eyes started to dwindle into flames again, but now I could see pictures in them, outlined in fire. Dragons fighting wizards outside the castle, and dwarves fighting elves, and elves fighting wizards, and other elves. I couldn't tell who was winning. Sometimes it seemed to be one set of fiery shapes, and sometimes it seemed to be the other. As I stared at the fire, I realized that I could feel the jangling from all the wizard staffs, and the deep rumbling of the magic of the enchanted forest, and the purring of the castle itself, even though I wasn't holding the sword anymore. I could even feel the shape of the wizard spells inside and outside the castle, including the one around and over the brazier. I could feel the magic of the sword, too, weaving a bright pattern through all the other types of magic. I followed the pattern until I saw how it worked, and then I reached out toward all the different kinds of magic and twisted. The jangling of the wizard's staffs stopped abruptly as the power of the enchanted forest swallowed up the power of the staffs. Immediately, the flames in front of me swirled and pulled together so that the pictures I'd been watching disappeared, and I found myself staring at a crowd of very angry ex-wizards through a shifting curtain of fire. At least 2 of the wizards were wearing swords, and they were reaching for them. The leader started to point in my direction, and I ducked instinctively. Almost every wizard who's any good carries a spell or 2 outside his staff, just in case the staff gets stolen. The wizards at the castle didn't have any magic in their staffs anymore, but they could still make trouble with their spare spells. I dove behind the brazier just in time to avoid something like a large lightning bolt. I swallowed, hoping these wizards didn't have very many more spells like that. I heard shouts, and I peered around the edge of the brazier, expecting to see the wizards with the swords coming after me. Wizards were running in several directions, but none of them seemed to be heading for me. For a moment I was puzzled, but then I saw Morwen, Telemaine, and a couple of elves charging into the room from the hallway. I didn't stop to worry about how they'd gotten there. I turned back to the brazier to pull the sword of the Sleeping King out of it so I could join the fight, and I stopped. The flames were still swirling in the air above the brazier, but they were denser somehow and brighter. All I could see was a mass of white and yellow light, shot with power. Then something flashed so brightly I had to cover my eyes. When I could see again, there was a door in the very center of the brazier, right on top of the place where I had thrown the key and facing the point of the sword. The door hung between two pillars that looked as though they were made of solid light, and I couldn't see anything around it except light and flames. I think the door is important. What do you think? I stared at the door for a moment as it grew even more solid. I wasn't sure I wanted to find out what was on the other side. Doors like that are even worse than the one in Morwen's house. They can go anywhere. I reached for the sword of the Sleeping King, but before my hand touched it, the door opened, and a man stepped through. He didn't look at all like the simulacrum. He was taller, with black hair and tired-looking gray eyes, and he didn't have a beard. He was dressed in plain clothes, but there was a feeling of strength about him and power. Even without the thin gold circlet he wore, I would have guessed who he was. Circlet is like it's a very thin crown, just like almost like a necklace that you wear on your head. So he's probably the king, right? I took a deep breath of relief as he stepped down from the brazier and onto the marble floor in front of me. As he did, the doorway behind him melted back into leaping flames, which faded quickly until there was nothing there except the brazier and the glowing coals. The room was utterly silent. I looked up at the king of the enchanted forest for a moment, then turned to the brazier and reached for the hilt of the sword of the Sleeping King. The sword wasn't even warm from the fire, but the blade shone even more brightly than it had the day Mother brought it out of the enchanted forest and gave it to me. I looked at it for a minute, then turned back to the king and held it out. "I've come to return your sword, Father," I said. That's the end of chapter 20. Chapter 21 is called In Which the Battle Ends and Antorell Makes Trouble Again. I know you're surprised. So come back for chapter 21, and then we have chapter 22, and then it's over. I'm very excited to read next week. So hopefully I'll see you then. Have a nice night. Bye.